Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to Skill Set for Supply Chain Profession. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for everyone out there, and thank you for joining us. So this is going to be a special topic today because it's one of my favorite, and what really triggered this this topic is the amount of question I received during the last webinar we had about the supply chain excellence and SCORP, supply chain operation reference model education, and so on. I started receiving questions about the difference between certificates and education and so on. So I thought this would be very interesting if we spend the next hour talking about supply chain education, certifications, and the skills needed for supply chain professionals. Okay, but what I did actually is that I pulled it back, not to start talking about the certification, but more important topics that you need to understand as a supply chain professional before you craft your career or you select the proper education for yourself. So some housekeeping rules. Everyone is muted, and that's because the number of attendees is in hundreds, so it's very hard to accommodate everyone talking or asking questions. If you have any question during this webinar for the next upcoming hour, simply leave it on the chat box, because we basically dedicate the last 5 or 10 minutes to answer your questions. Any technical issues, simply log off and come back again. If you don't hear me or whatever happens, just try to log off and come back again using the same link. Okay. All right. My name is Samer Al-Madhoun. I am the managing partner of MUHAKAT. And why is this favorite topic of mine? Because at MUHAKAT we educate in supply chain. We educate for a purpose that I'm going to talk about shortly, because we have a vision of what we call bridging the supply chain talent gap. So just a very important note for everyone: nothing in this presentation intends to promote or sell any type of products, but rather create awareness for you on how you should think going forward, building your career and your supply chain education. Okay, so if you see any brands here, the intention of these brands, I know most of you are familiar with CSCP, for example. If you see these brands, these names, these logos, the intention is to create awareness for you, not promoting anything to be sold at this stage. Okay. I'm a certification junkie. I like to collect certificates, but the right certificates for me. And this is the first learning that you need to learn today. What is the right education for you? It's something that we need to answer today, but we need to answer it wisely based on a set of criteria. Okay. To start with, the world is living a dilemma, and the dilemma is called the talent gap. So if you go over the internet, Google supply chain talent gap, you will find a whole literature, articles, interviews that talks about one fact that all companies are facing nowadays in their profession. One of the biggest issues, and I'm quoting here, by the way, one of the biggest issues facing the supply chain sector today, and it threatens innovation in the sector, is the lack of talent. What does that mean technically? It means that those who works in the profession today does not have the right amount of skills or capacities needed to perform a certain job, and they fail in the eyes of recruiters, managers, everyone else to do the job as needed. So 25% of managers in supply chain roles today across multiple sectors highlight the supply chain talent shortage as a key feature issue, which means we do have supply chain jobs in the market, and it's increasing. For example, as you see today with the COVID outbreak, there's a great demand now on logisticians, procurement professionals, but not any procurement professional, a procurement professional that's capable of managing the risks of supply chain, or a logistician that's capable to handle all the stress that's happening today and the chain effect of COVID. That's just an example of what do we mean by lack of talent. Okay, so this had been identified globally as a big issue for everyone. And the question becomes today, how do we bridge this gap? How do we bridge this gap? There are multiple ways that the professionals can bridge the skills gap they have in their supply chain. And certainly one of them is on-job education, and one of them is acquiring certificates, probably reading material, I don't know, learning from someone, having a mentor. There are multiple ways to do that, but my profession is about education. So I'm going to tell you more about the supply chain certifications that can help you today in progressing going forward in the supply chain profession. Okay, but we need to step back from that, and before we talk about education in supply chain and professional education in supply chain, it is worthy that before you say which supply chain certificate is best for you, because this question had been around since ever. Okay, especially with us for MUHAKAT, people calling, inquiring, everyone wants to jump into CSCP, Certified Supply Chain Professional. And I say, hey, hold it. There are a few questions that you need to answer before you select what is the right certification for you to bridge the talent gap. Okay. Now, the first question that you need to ask yourself, what skills do I need to raise in myself to help me excel in my profession? Knowing that the job is demanding certain skills, knowing that there's an international talent gap, knowing that I have a certain background of bachelor degree or education that does not match the current job title. For example, I would know that you might be an accountant, but you are working as a procurement professional, or you might have studied humanitarian science, English language, but you work as a logistics officer. We know this as a fact, okay? It's happening. That's because historically, supply chain was not on the table as an education and bachelor degree and a professional education at universities until very recently, okay? So before you think what supply chain education is most convenient for you, to bridge the talent gap, you need to ask yourself, what skills do I need to raise in myself to help me excel in my profession? That would be the first question that I would advise everyone to ask themselves. Then the second question is, what do I want to become in the future? What is my vision? Where do I see myself 5 years from now, 10 years from now? That would help you shape what do you want to study today, okay? And then what capacities do I need to build in myself? What kind of abilities to perform things that I need to build in myself to be competent in the market today? Because today the market is very competitive, and the market is, I heard it from someone saying that master degree is something essential today, you know, just like bachelor degree. Used to be back in the day a luxury, actually, and something that with high standards, still with high standards, but it's an essential knowledge today, given the world that accelerates every day and the complexity of supply chain and so on. We need to keep learning and advancing the skills and competency that we have today. So I'm going to drive a poll as usual. Every time we drive a poll, and these polls I'm starting to see questions. Please keep them going, and I will make sure to answer all these questions towards the end. So let's have a poll that asks us about how much do you know exactly and precisely what skills and competencies you need to have in yourself to do a current job or a future job, okay? Yes or no. Do you know exactly what are the set of skills needed in you to exactly say, this is the profession that I want to work at, these are the skills that I need to build in myself? And be honest with yourself. Do you understand your gap? from a knowledge perspective, from skills perspective, from competencies perspective, and this is something variable. Yeah, it depends how far have you gone in education, how much is your career path clear for you, and so on. Okay, so we are pulling the results. While you do, guys, I'm enjoying my cup of tea, so you'll wait for a minute or so. I'm having great results so far. But still, we are at 75% response. So please make sure you answer. Do you know exactly the set of skills needed to perform your current or future job? Say you want to become a supply chain manager in the future. Do you know the exact skills needed to hold that position? Or say currently you are a demand planner. I'm just trying to think loud with you. You are a demand planner. Do you know exactly the set of skills that's needed for you to become a successful demand planner? Because you have a gap and you need to fill that gap. Say you are procurement officer or procurement supervisor. Do you exactly know the skills needed at a supervisory level that you need to build in yourself going forward? So that's another way to. You want to become a procurement manager. In answering the question, what do you want to become? You want to become a procurement manager. Do you know the exact skills and capacities that you should have in you and you need to build in yourself going forward to hold that position? And so on, depending on where you are. Let's say that you are a manufacturing, you want to become a manufacturing manager or supply chain director or supply planner, whatever comes to your mind, warehouse manager. Do you know the exact skills needed that you need to build in you going forward? Okay, so we have 86% of you. I don't know why some of you says the poll is not working for them, but I see the answers going. Please check your system, guys. Zaid and Anwar, please make sure you see you answer, because the majority are answering. So we have 88% of you answering so far. Okay. Okay, Zaid says it's working now. Great, guys. Yes, Ibrahim, it does have a certain skill to become a billionaire. Okay, so I'm going to distribute the results. Thank you very much for everyone who voted or could vote. And share. Very interesting. What I love the most, that 42% of you says, yes, we know, and that's really great. And this is where everyone should be going forward to build their career. Okay, 58% says they don't know exactly the skills needed, and this is what you need to work on before. This is the learning from the poll, guys. Before you go select a certificate, you need to understand what are the skills that you need to build in yourself going forward. And then answering the very good question is, what is the best certification for me would be the one that bridges the skills needed in my current or future job. Okay, so the right, again, please write this down, the right certificate for you is the certificate that will make you bridge the skills gap and the competencies that you have or you are missing or you need to have going forward in the future, either in current job or in a future job. So once you ask yourself, what do I want to become, or what am I currently doing, and then looking into what skills is needed to raise in myself and what capacities are needed, then from there you start looking for the most convenient education that would put you on the right track going forward. And this is a big lesson for anyone who would always want to go to a one famous known certificate that is known in the market and so on, the first thing that you need to know is to ask and understand what skills does it raise in me, and then are these skills what is needed today in the market, in myself, and so on. Then from there you would say that's the right education for me or not. Okay, so that's a great learning. Let me go back to my slides. Okay, we did share the poll. Thank you. I want to share that. Okay. So yeah, going forward, as we answer that, and that's a great learning for everyone, the next question becomes, how does the competencies level look like? Because we talked about the skills and competencies. Yeah, there are international publications out there done by institutes, by research entities, by bodies of knowledge, by standards organizations, yeah, that talks about what skills is needed and what capacities that should be in a supply chain professional. This is one example taken from CIPS, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. They have done an amazing job creating 5 categories of competencies. For them, tactical is the lowest, then you become operational, managerial, professional, and advanced professional. Okay, and because the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply is all about procurement education, and that's just an example, you can read exactly about what does the tactical persons. Tactical is the entry level. Imagine yourself fresh graduate going to work as a procurement professional or procurement officer. So from a tactical standpoint, you need to apply the tasks associated with the procurement. And here's the jobs that, as an example, that might be associated with a tactical level. That would be administrator, stock controller, inventory planner, assistant buyer, and so on. Then you might be moving in your skills to become an operational level, and this is where you become a buyer, procurement executive, procurement specialist, contractor, and these just, these are just examples. You could be a procurement officer or whatever, and then you move to a managerial set of skills where you become senior buyer, chief buyer, category manager, logistics manager, supply chain executive, and your job here is to develop, improve, and fulfill organization functional objectives in procurement. And then you would raise your skill to a higher level, and this is where procurement manager, senior category manager, supply chain manager, head of logistics and operations would be, or even you can expand. Think of your organization today where you have a supply chain director or procurement director, and that would be advanced professional capacity level, meaning there are set of skills that has to be in someone at the state of advanced professional. And here you find procurement directors, supply chain directors, commercial directors, VP supply chains, and so on. And the role here is to lead the procurement function and procurement teams within an organization to influence everyone and establish best practices of supply chain. Okay, so this is just the notion behind asking the questions, what capacities do I need to build in myself? And then looking into different organization that's doing different standards for the profession. Okay, so the first question becomes, which one of these are you today, given your current status? Are you in a tactical position or operational position or managerial position? And from there, or where do you want to become? From there, you start to understand what are the capacities needed in me and the skills needed in me to perform that job. CIPS have done also an amazing job, in looking at, this is a study done by CIPS with Hay Group. Hay is an international human resources advisory group, going out there in the market and asking standards organization and very high level seniors in procurement science, for example, on what skills is needed in every level: tactical, operational, managerial, professional, and advanced professional. Okay, and the color is the legend here. So basically, if you look at the tactical, so when you get into the job as a logistics officer or procurement officer or whatever, this is what is needed from you to start with. You need to have skills in communication, and you need to have negotiation skills as a start. You need to have influencing skills as a start. You need to have, what is the purple one? You need to have little leadership skills, okay? You need to have supply relationship management, and that's not massive. You need to have financial skills, and you need to have supplier evaluation capability, okay? So these are the skills that you need to build in yourself when you are in a tactical level, and same applies to operational, managerial. So if you go to the highest level, so let's compare the highest level with the lowest, you'll find that at a very high level, what is needed is totally different, okay? You will need to have very high level of influencing, very high level of negotiation capability for the organization, very high level of leadership, because your job is to influence teams. This is what you need to learn. This is what you need to raise in yourself as at the capacity level of a procurement director or a supply chain director, for example. You need to lead teams and learn how to have communication skills with everyone in the organization. You need to have sourcing capabilities on a very high level, finding the right suppliers. You need to have supplier relationship, but that would be less. As you see, you should be engaged more on soft skills than technical skills. And then on the lowest level, you need to have also communication skills and so on. Also, same applies to the operational level, same applies to the managerial level, and so on. So the thing is, it's not about going to just attend a certificate. It's about what are the skills and capacities needed in me in order to fulfill my current job. And as I see, and this is just an example from a study out there to what skills is needed in a procurement professional. There's a lot of standards organizations actually that promotes what are the standards and skills needed to be in you as a procurement professional or a logistics professional or a supply chain professional and so on. If you look at this is adapted from CIPS, the Chartered Institute Procurement and Supply. I'm going to talk about that later, the institute itself. But the APEX, for example, they don't see the American Production Inventory Control Society does not see the capacity levels as same as CIPS. CIPS is British, APEX is American, so APEX is doing it in a different way: operational, tactical, and strategic. And that would be 3 levels that you need to raise yourself with certain skills and so on. Okay, they're just different schools of how you perceive skills and so on. The greatest question becomes today, after all what we discussed together, why some supply chain certificates stands out while some does not. And stands out mean they are reputable, known to be of a great quality, known to make difference. So how do I call a certificate a reputable one or a very good one? In general, I'm talking in general. If these certificates can create change in my career, if these certificates can enhance my current status, if these certificates can add knowledge and skills to me, okay? This is where I say this certificate is worth investing at. And this certificate would stand out. While there are some certificates, by the way, the market has more than 35 to 40 certificates. I would say, from my humble experience, the majority of them should be negligible, okay? From a market perspective, from skills perspective, and so on. So the question is, why some supply chain certificates stand out while some does not? Okay, while some of them makes difference and others does not, simply because the way the certification is being built, some organizations, before they are a body of knowledge, they are a standards organization. Standards organization mean before they do certificates, they build the standards needed in a supply chain professional, and then they would create an education that meets the skills needed at that level. For example, CIPS, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, is one of them. APEX is one of them, because they set the standards needed. Then they would create an education around that. As a result, when you attend a class for these organizations, as an example, you would and unintentionally or intentionally build the skills needed in yourself to perform the current job. And that would make you desired in the market. That would make you bridge your talent gap, because now you study what's needed to be studied and what skills needs to be raised in you as a supply chain professional. Okay, here is an example of standards in procurement also. For example, let's say what is needed from you as someone in the profession of procurement or logistics is delivering outcomes in procurement and supply, and the pillar here is called performance standards. Let's observe how does the tactical level builds capacity towards that, and how does the professional competency level builds capacities toward that. This is what is needed from you in a tactical position. Tactical stands for entry level, buyer, procurement officer, and so on. For example, you will find out the tasks needed here is very basics. Yeah, all you have to do is to have the ability to understand the 5 rights of procurement and apply them at your job. All you have to do, or all what you need to learn at this level is to create value for money in your procurement. Okay, create savings, how to create savings within the organization, how to make the right decision in procurement in this case, how to look into analytical skills, budget exercises, and so on. Okay, and the list goes on. This is what is needed from someone at the tactical level. But what is really needed at someone from the professional competency level, which is the highest level, is totally different than the tactical capacities. You are needed to create benchmarking in supply chain, measuring your performance against other organizations. You are needed to create process re-engineering in supply chain, ability to retweak the processes that you have to enhance the company performance. You need to augment sustainability in procurement and supply. You need to build robust procurement, supply relationship management. And so, see, it's the same pillar. Delivering outcomes in procurement and supply as a capacity that you need to build in yourself. But because we talk about different level, and that's kind of expected, you know, the tasks and skills needed from you is not similar, or should not be similar to the ones needed from your director. Yeah, but standards organization, they set exactly the kind of skills and capacities needed for you, and now you take it from there, or organizations should take it from there, or HR should take it from there, or you as a supply chain professional should take it from there to start thinking what is the most convenient education to help me understand the 5 rights of procurement, for example, if these are the skills that I need to raise in myself. Okay, or benchmarking KPIs of supply chain, if this is what is needed to raise in myself actually. And this should change your perspective on which certificate you need to maintain or attend or keep or be certified as. So we see many professionals coming, with all due respects, man. CSCP, Certified Supply Chain Professional, is one of the best certificates out there in the market, and this is known almost for everyone, but it might not be the right thing for you. Okay, I'm going to be honest with that. Why? It might not be tackling the skills needed for you. The certificate is great, but this is what is needed from you at this stage, you know? That's what I'm saying. This is what is needed from you at this stage. So you better find the proper education that would flourish these skills and enhance these skills for you, rather than investing somewhere else. Okay, for example, just we'll talk about this later. So what have CIPS done, because they are a standards organization and they divide the capacities into tactical, operational, managerial, professional, and advanced professional. After they set the standards, they were thinking, okay, now what? We need to educate people about these standards. Okay, so they created a set line of education that would match the skills needed to raise in yourself: tactical, operational, mid-managerial, something advanced, and advanced professional. Okay, so if you are in a director level, I'm not saying take level 6, I'm saying you have to have all these skills either learned by the job, best practices, or whatever, read about them, or attended certificates until you reach that level of competencies. Okay, that's what I'm saying in general, but I'm going to talk about these certificates shortly. But what you need to learn is that when you select a certificate, it's all about the skills you need to raise in yourself. Okay, or when you want to buy an education, whatever kind of education, you need to ask yourself what are the skills and capacities needed to fulfill, and that certification would make me bridge the talent gap. The certification market is in a mess, really in a mess. You know, bunch of slides coming all together with an educator, regardless here or there, and some examination that would make you certified. But you know, you leave the examination thinking, this is I haven't bridged my skills gap, and the market is not respecting that. Okay, so this is all about selecting the right education for yourself. Okay, so if you have ever come to my classes, if it happened online or regular classes, I always talk about this slide. Supply chain is a set of processes: plan, source, make, deliver, and return. Any supply chain would have all or some of these processes happening. Delivering is like logistics of finished products, warehousing management, distribution management, and so on. Making is the production, manufacturing process. Sourcing is the procurement process, selecting suppliers, negotiating with suppliers, and so on. Planning is like forecasting management, MRP, master scheduling, you know, sales and operation planning, and so on. Returning is the function where sometimes you need to return products logistically and managing them going back forward. So if you're not manufacturing, you don't have a make process in your organization. You would have probably plan, source, deliver, and return, and so on, depending on your organization. Some skill sets are built around, and this is a great learning for you as well, some skill sets and capacities is building around where do you reside in a supply chain. Let's say currently you are in a sourcing function. You are a procurement officer or procurement manager, or probably you are a warehouse manager that works in the deliver function, or your job is a demand planner. You would be working in that function. In that case, the question becomes, what certificates in the market that can help me really, you know, and not any certificates, the certificates that bridges the gap. Okay, the certificates that build skills, the certificates that builds capacity in the function that I work at. Okay, depending on your functionality, because this is a different way of seeing things. So there are a lot of certificates in the market today that can help you excel in a function that you work at, or a function that you want to work in the future going forward. Okay, or maybe it's your desire to become a supply chain manager where you want to master plan, source, make, deliver, and return, and you need all the skills needed for that. Okay, so the question becomes, what certificates out there in the market that help me bridge this educational gap? So I'm trying my best to be unbiased here, because I have a certain bias. The reason why I have bias to education is that I spent a few years back working in this, trying to understand which certification is more important than other certificates. What I have done here is I tried my best to gather what can be the best certificates in the market today to help you excel in functions like plan, source, make, deliver, and return. Okay. Have I disincluded any certificates? Of course I have done this, because I don't see these certificates are worthy of skilling the professional gap that we want to look at, or maybe I have just missed some because there are many out there in the market. Anyway, I've tried my best to be unbiased and select some certificates for you to look at in the market. So what we are going to do now is to look into plan, source, make, deliver, return, and I'm going to explain briefly on what certificates that works very well everywhere and known to bridge the talent gap that you might need to raise in yourself depending on the function you work at. Okay, so you can see demand-driven planner, you see CLTD, you see Institute of Forecasting Professionals, you see Advanced Diploma in Procurement and Supply, you see CSCA, you see ISM, Institute of Supplies Management, you see, of course, CSCP, You see, advanced certificate procurement and supply. So what I'm going to do now is just to take you on a very fast tour. I started to see questions coming. Keep them coming because we'll dedicate the last 5 minutes to answer your questions. So take notes of these certificates and let's talk about them briefly one by one. To start with, because we talked about plan, source, make, deliver, and return, it might be your desire that you want to learn about every one of these in brief. Every one of these in brief. Okay, so what I think that can be a good entry point for you to learn about plan, source, make, deliver, return is 2 certificates. CSCA, Certified Supply Chain Analyst, and that's a tactical level, that's an entry-level education. So if you are a fresh graduate or in an operational level or someone that does not belong to the profession and wants to learn more about supply chain, this is a great entry point for you, Certified Supply Chain Analyst. It's a very basic short certificate that teaches you about the whole scope, a bit of something everywhere, a bit of sourcing, a bit of planning, a bit of making, and so on. With these topics, little bit of sourcing and procurement, little bit of manufacturing and transportation, little bit of logistics and lean operations, planning functions, and so on. Okay, so that's one great start for you if you want to learn plan, source, make, deliver, and return in brief without going deeper in the details. Another great certificate that you can start with is CPIM Part 1. I'm going to talk about this shortly, but remember that CPIM Part 1 is a great entry-level education for you. Okay, plan. Let's say if you are working in the plan function, let's say you are a professional, demand planner, you work in the S&OP function, sales and operational planning function, you want to learn skills needed for forecasting, the kind of skill needed for forecasting is understanding of statistical model, calculations of errors in forecasting, what does trend mean and how does it differ than seasonal thinking, and so on, how to communicate forecasting, how to create a forecasting process. This is the kind of skills needed if you work in the planning function in the organization. And the Institute of Business and Forecasting Planning have done an amazing job in one of their certificates called the Certified Professional Forecaster, CPF. And CPF, if you look into the modules, is all about raising skills in you as a dedicated forecasting professional. So my personal humble advice, if you want to learn more about forecasting, this is one great certificate for you to start at. Okay, so learning about exponential smoothing, learning about sales and operational planning, learning about how to communicate, creating cross-functional teams for forecasting, how do you deal with seasonal and cyclic models, averaging models, and so on. So you would go for an exam, and if you pass that exam, you become a certified professional forecaster. And that's one great way to start a career. If you want to start a career or flourish a current career that you have, or build skills in the planning function in an organization, CPF is a great education for you. Okay, one great certificate that's trending today in the market, also in the planning function, is called the demand-driven planner. And let me tell you more about the demand-driven organization. The demand-driven organization is based on a theory by Pitak and Smith about how to create demand-driven thinking. Okay, and demand-driven thinking believes that the master scheduling and the MRP, material requirement planning, is not the right solution for our problems today in the VUCA world we live at, in the complex world we live at. So they came up with a new methodology that's emerging today, how to create planning based on the demand, and they call it demand-driven MRP, demand-driven material requirement planning. So it's also a planning function, but it drives you away from the classic material requirement planning and master scheduling and forecasting techniques that you would learn. And this is something really great to look at if you want to learn how to manage your supply, how to manage your demand in a volatile organization. So you need to learn about the demand-driven approaches in that. And if you ever been to any of our classes, we talk about the decoupling points in inventory, and this certificate exactly teaches you how to create decoupling of inventory in the organization. Okay, so this is another great certificate for you to master the planning function going forward. Highly advised for everyone. So what comes after planning? Sourcing function. So my personal advice and humble advice in sourcing is that the best education in the market today comes from the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. Why? Because these guys, they spent the last 100 years putting the skills needed in a procurement professional. And then after they did that, they put the standards of procurement profession. They created an education to make you master the standards and the skills and the capacities needed. So they brought up to the market great certificates like certificates in procurement and supply, and that's an entry level. Advanced certificate in procurement supply, and this is also an entry level. And then here you become like mid senior buyers, diploma in procurement and supply, and then you go in an advanced diploma in procurement and supply, and then the very high level education is professional diploma in procurement and supply. And this is a great education for anyone who wants to excel in the procurement function. I have seen many dear friends, great professionals, procurement people coming to supply chain classes, hoping that they would learn about procurement, about contracting management, about negotiation management, about leadership in procurement, category management. Unfortunately, a supply chain class would not offer you that, because what this kind of skills is purely procurement functional and requires procurement education. Okay, so if you look at a very high level, strategic level, you will find the kind of education that you will excel at is strategic ethicals, global commercial strategies, strategic program leadership, and so on. But if you look at the diploma, which is a mid-entry level in procurement and supply, okay, you will find topics that relates directly to what you do today in the business: scope and influence of procurement and supply, defining business needs of procurement, whole life asset management, ethical procurement, supplier relationship management, contracting management, negotiation management, and so on. And the topics here are more operational and even more operational, and so on. Okay, I myself, I am sitting for CIPS exam because I need to have skills in relation to procurement. So currently I am at level 5. I'm doing examinations at level 5, and this is like a procurement ladder, you know. You can step by, you keep doing certificates, or you can just obtain this one and say, I hold the diploma, or obtain this one, and I would say you would hold the advanced certificate in procurement and supply. But if you manage to excel in all these levels, you would obtain what we call it today MCIPS, member of CIPS, which is the highest credential today in the procurement profession, and one of the highest in the supply chain profession. Okay, highly recommended for procurement professionals who looks for to excel in sourcing function. Are there other great certificates for the sourcing function? Yeah, ISM, Institute of Supplies Management, have done great job in one of their certificates to teach procurement as a profession, but unfortunately ISM is very American based, and you rarely find the education available outside the North American states and so on. Okay, good. Now, what else can we excel at in procurement? Apex have done an amazing job. Apex is also a standard organization. They put the standards of the profession and they created education around that. So you know for a fact these certificates are offered by Apex, the American Production and Inventory Control Society. CSCP, Certified Supply Chain Professional. CLTD, Certified Logistics, Transportation and Distribution. CPIM, Certified Production and Inventory Management. And SCORP, the Supply Chain Operation Reference Model. And last time when we did the Supply Chain Excellence, we received massive questions about what is the difference between SCORP and CSCP and other certificates. And actually that triggers today's webinar. Okay. So how do I perceive them? And this is how they look like. Basically, every one of these certificates are very reputable in the market because they bridge the skill gap. This is what we agree on. They build capacity, they bridge the skill gap, but every one of them has a different focus. So CPIM, Certified Production and Inventory Manager, looks to build the skills and the capability for the organization boundaries. So everything you learn is about within the organization itself, the production process of the planning for inventory for production and so on. Okay, so CPIM has an internal focus. It does not tackle global issues in supply chain outside the boundaries of the organization. Okay, and it's basically specifically for production environments. Okay, so CPIM provides candidate with the knowledge for productivity within the organization supply chain, for optimizing organization inventory, and so on, basically within the organization itself. Meaning it does not tackle international, global perspective of the supply chain. CSCP does basically the opposite. It does look into the external environment of the supply chain. That's why the nature of material inside CSCP looks into beyond internal operations to see global logistics, international trading, regulatories, and so on. Okay, strategies for dealing with markets and so on. SCORP is another certificate by Apex. It's an endorsement actually, and it looks into how can you dissect the processes in your organization, how to re-engineer processes in your organization, how to enhance the performance of supply chain, how to measure the supply chain performance, and so on. CLTD has a total different focus, newest by Apex, Certified Logistics, Transportation, and Distribution, and this is basically to build the skills needed for logistics strategy, planning of logistics, warehousing management, and so on. I'm going to talk about that shortly. So the notion behind this slide is that Apex has a bundle of certificates for different needs and skills that you need to raise in yourself. Okay, so let's have a closer look in every one of them. CPIM, Certified Production Inventory Manager, is all about the internal function of the organization, the planning of raw material and production management, the sourcing of the raw material, and the making process. So if you are in a position today, or you want to be in the future in a position where you learn plan, source, make within the organization for a production environment, CPIM is a great certificate for that. Had been around since 60 years or so, has two parts, CPIM Part 1 and CPIM Part 2. And if you remember when we talked about the entry-level education, CPIM Part 1 is a great entry-level education. It teaches you the basics of supply chain for a manufacturing environment. Okay, just like the CSCA with different backgrounds and so on, but the idea is that the basics of supply chain covers plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable in a simplified manner. Okay, once you finish Part 1 and then you need to sit for an exam, you can continue to have Part 2. You will only be granted CPIM as an international accreditation if you finish Part 1 and Part 2. Then if you look at Part 2, that you will within the organization boundaries, you look at the master planning of resources, you look at scheduling and planning for manufacturing environments, execution and control of operations, and so on. Strategic management of resources inside the organization. One great certificate that I highly recommend for industrial engineers, anyone that works or wants to work in a manufacturing environment, actually. Next, CLTD. So now, if what you care about learning and the skills that you need to flourish is in the deliver and return process of finished products. That would be distribution management, warehousing, logistics networks, logistics planning, international logistics, and so on. The right place to learn all these certificates with a reputable set of skills embedded in the certificate would be Certified Logistics, Transportation, and Distribution. This is, if you look to the material, generic overview of logistics, logistics network design, global logistics considerations, warehouse management, order management, very important, transportation management. This is solely dedicated for the logistics function. If you work in warehouses, if you want to excel in international logistics, globalization of logistics, logistics network design, order management, inventory, warehousing, and so on, this is a perfect place to start at. Okay, good. The mother of all certificates, CSCP, and I call it so for one reason. Why do I call it the mother of all certificates in the world, and had been ranked #1 since 10 years so far? Basically, since the inception of CSCP, it had been ranked #1 because it covers an end-to-end education. So thoroughly, if you want to learn about everything, from planning, sourcing, making, and I know a lot of you are CSCP candidates and they are attending, and they will agree with me that the scope of CSCP is very extended, that it contains plan, source, make, deliver, retain, and enable. What I want you to learn about CSCP is that CSCP level is tactical to strategic. It would not make sense if you are a fresh graduate and you want to learn something tactical to strategic. This is not the right place to start at. Okay, you would need some experience. It's not mandatory, but it's preferred that you would need some experience to attend a CSCP class. The more you have experience, the more you enjoy it, the more you feel relevant. Module 1 is about building a strategy in supply chain. This is something major. You really don't have to. You really don't have to learn in an entry-level education or in an entry-level job. You don't have to learn about the supply chain strategy implementation and how to craft a strategy and how to design a supply chain and so on. This is not the skills needed in you today. What is needed in you today is to understand the 5 rights of procurement, essential supplier relations, and so on. So you better invest your money, time, and resources in what builds your skills that's needed today. Okay? Module 2 goes more into the planning function of the organization, procurement, supply relations, reverse logistics, and so on. Module 3 talks about enhancing the supply chain function, improving the supply chain, measuring supply chain performance, and so on. Okay. More of supply chain educations, still have one to go. SCORE. I have received many questions about the supply chain operation reference model. Look, this is an amazing endorsement by Apex. It also looks into the plan, source, make, deliver, return process, but from one perspective. What are the processes? How do they look like? How can I measure my supply chain performance? What are the practices that can be implemented? What are the people skills that can be implemented? Basically, SCORE is a way to re-engineer your supply chain, to reconstruct your supply chain. So if you are in a position where you need to learn how to re-engineer your supply chain, if you want to become a supply chain consultant in the future, if it's your job to build a function like a S&OP function, if it's your job to augment new practices in place, put a process in place, change a process in place, okay, SCORE is a great place to start learning that. Supply chain operation reference model, where you break down the silos of your processes, how do they look like, how they should look like, and so on, how to break down to a smaller processes. These are codifications by SCORE, and so on, how to map your supply chain and diagnose your supply chain, and so on. So that's a leading supply chain framework. So if you want to raise this kind of skills on you, supply chain re-engineering, ability to change things in supply chain, augment changes, or being part of a team that wants to do that, bring a new process to the supply chain, or examine current supply chain, or measure its performance, SCORE is a great education to do so. Okay, so that's it for what I wanted to show you when it comes to those certificates. Now let's do some questions, guys, because we have barely 5-10 minutes to talk about your questions. So keep your questions coming. I'm going to read them and answer them. Anas is asking, I want to become a demand planner. Which certificate will help me the most? I guess I answered this, Anas. I would go for the certified professional forecaster, or the certified forecasting professional, the one that I described earlier in one of the slides, actually. Do not waste your time in going to CSCP or diploma in procurement and supply, because they don't build skills in forecasting, though they talk about forecasting, but they are not dedicated 100% for forecasting. Ward is asking, please tell us about the Certified Professional Forecaster. It's one great certificate, Ward, by the Institute of Forecasting Professionals. I will be more than happy to share with you the contents, to look at them and to see if this is what you need to build in yourself as a procurement, as a demand planner, actually. Okay. Ibrahim is asking, you should told us, I will fetch my cup of tea. Of course, man, it's, you know, we're enjoying our time, so, and these are free chats. It's working now. Please elaborate, Zahir is asking, please elaborate the comparison between CSCP and CIPS. This is a very frequent question out there, man. Zahir, CIPS education is for procurement only. If you want to learn contracting, negotiation management, sourcing process, tendering process, go get CIPS education. They are more beneficial for you. They build these skills in you. CSCP is more of an end-to-end supply chain thinking. You will learn some plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. Ibrahim is asking, I want to be a billionaire. Does that have a particular skill? Of course, man. You have to be a manipulator, slacker, and so on. We all want to be billionaires. Osama is asking, I need to be operations manager or manufacturing manager, then CO. Good for you, man. But I'm going to talk seriously and honestly. A great start would be the CPIM, Certified Production and Inventory Manager. This is where you get the skills needed for manufacturing management. Hussam Sarsour is asking, the warehouse manager under managerial, right? Yes, Hussam, it is under managerial. And yeah, you can just look for skills that relates to warehousing management, and this is something you find on the CLTD, Certified Logistics, Transportation and Distribution. A dear friend is asking, I am unemployed. Well, you can maybe the right thing to do is to get yourself a supply chain certificate that might help you in nailing a good job in the future. I am touching mostly a gap between certificate courses and the reality in our companies and their practices. Why? Yeah, this is a question by Hamza. This is because the companies we work at sometimes does not deploy the best practices in supply chain management. Okay, and that's also because supply chain certificates, they show you the biggest picture because they want you to learn everything. So they show you the biggest picture, which is basically international standards that works at Amazon, Dell, and so on. So you can learn from and try to implement as much as you can. The majority of those who attend CSCP, Hamza, they ask me this question. What we learn is far away from what we do. Yeah, that's the point, Hamza. You try to create change by what you have learned, and the greatest thing is you see how international practices look like. But if you go work at Unilever, for example, you see everything that you learn at CSCP and CPIM within the boundaries of the organizations. So the problem here is not in the certificate, it's in the work environment. Noor is asking, what is the difference between operations and supply chain management? Well, there's a lot of literature about that, Noor. But in reality, supply chain can fall under operations management. However, operations is a big umbrella. You can be an operation manager for a hotel that does nothing but hotel-related, hospitality-related operations. Okay, but in a supply chain environment, in a retail environment, in a manufacturing environment, it might be that supply chain would not necessarily, but would report to operations actually. How important are negotiation skills for a position in supply chain? Extremely important. Maria is asking, does it matter if I am naturally a quiet person? Well, no, it doesn't matter really, because when you learn negotiations, Maria, you learn how to wear hats, how to play different roles in negotiation. And I'm a very calm person, just like you. But what I learned from negotiation classes is that I need to wear hats, which is basically about the negotiation positions that I need to take. Is it okay to take a screenshot of the slides? Yes, sure, no problem. Hazar is asking, how can we test our negotiation skills as freshers? That's a nice example. That's a nice question. You can do that by going to a negotiation exercise. And this, you can find them online, or you can, in one of the negotiation classes, negotiation skill classes, you can go into a negotiation exercise actually. But let me know, I can share negotiation exercise with you. Ibrahim, couldn't agree more. Thank you, man. What is the difference between certified supply chain analyst and CSCP? There is a massive difference between them. Both of them, Dina is asking, both of them, Dina talks about plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. But one is tackling that in 20 hours, and the other is tackling that in 60 hours. So you can imagine the amount of massive information you receive in CSCP in relation to CSCA. So CSCA is an entry-level education, while CSCP is a strategic level education in supply chain. Ibrahim is agreeing with me on MRP. Yeah, MRP is causing issues, and the demand-driven, Ibrahim Hussein, the demand-driven organization is trying to tackle that by changing the way we think of the planning process. Are there any good certificates for reverse supply chain? Believe it or not, Niraj is asking. Until now, no. The reverse logistics is considered part of a regular of a logistics education. So if you go to CLTD, you will find great chapters that talks about reverse education. But there's no. I don't think there's a whole need to have a dedicated reverse logistics education so far, because the majority of what happens there is logistics, but it is reversed. So what you need actually is to raise your thinking of how does the reverse look like, and this is tackled in international certificates like CLTD, for example. Dina is asking, do you advise me on any business analytics, data analytics, and data science certification? Of course, Dina, if this is what is needed for your position today. Okay, if this is the skills that's needed to raise in your position. In general, is it really needed for supply chain professional? Of course, Dina. Business analytics and having a mindset of analyzing data, like data science, is the next big thing for everyone. So yeah, if you work in logistics as an essential skills, this is something you need to look at. Ibrahim is asking, what certificates needed for someone that works in warehousing and transportation field? Go for my personal view, go for CLTD, Certified Logistics, Transportation and Distribution, because it raises the skills and the capacities for someone that works in warehousing and transportation. Hazar is asking, do you recommend a fresher to work to experiencing the industry for 3-4 years? No, you don't have to work for 3-4 years to experience the industry. And then pursue a master degree in supply chain management. To be honest, I'm not a big fan. I hold an MBA, but I'm not a big fan of masters in supply chain, because they tackle, my personal view is that they tackle issues from a theoretical perspective, Hazar. If you ask me from my personal experience, I would say go for professional education, because professional education has determined the skills needed that has to be in the market. And if you ever go to classes like CIPS or CSCP or whatever, you'll find that they talk about what is happening in the market today. So Hazar, personally, no. I would say you go for supply chain professional education. Dina asks, how much does a CSCA certificate cost? This is beyond, we're not selling here, this is beyond the scope, but I'll make sure to connect you to the right person to help you with that. Suhad is asking, are there on planning in general or in supply chain specific? The forecasting professional certificate is about forecasting in general, but it touch base with supply chain education. Suhad is asking, you can go directly to the diploma without doing the previous certificates. Yes, yes, Suhad, because the diploma in procurement and supply is also an entry-level education. So you can bridge, not go to level 2 or 3, or go directly to diploma in procurement and supply. You don't need to go to level 2 or 3 unless you need to. Ahmed's asking, I'm a senior ERP applications consultant implementing supply chain models like Infor SAP. That's amazing. What is the best certificate for me? Depends what you want to learn, Ahmed. If you want to learn about the practices in supply chain that's deployed in SAP and Infor, that would be CSCP. because CSCP teaches about the supply chain practices. If what you need to learn is how to reconstruct processes and add to them practices and so on, that would be SCORE, Supply Chain Operation Reference Model. Hazar comes back again, asks, is it efficient to the refresher who didn't work yet to enhance their skills needed to become procurement officer assistant via online courses? Yes, of course. Hazar, it's about raising the skills in yourself. Okay, so if you think you can raise these skills by YouTube, that's fine. I highly doubt that, because the things are at YouTube are scattered, and LinkedIn Learning and Udemy, I respect all these platforms, but the learning there is scattered in courses. But what I love about supply chain certifications, the entry-level ones, they are focused to raise skills in you, like CPIM level 1. They know exactly what is needed. And then there's something important, back to the market needs. The market respects professional education certification because it raises these skills. Not any certificates, the ones that raises skills. Okay. Thomas is asking, are the CIPS level certificates prerequisites to each other? There is no prerequisite for level 4, 3, and 2. The real prerequisite starts at level 5. So you can start at level 4 if you want to and stop there. Or you can start at level 2 and stop there. Or maybe at level 3 and you stop there. Or you can keep going on the learning process. Okay, Thomas, thank you. How many years the employee should stay at the procurement officer level? It depends on the size of the organization, Oqla. I have seen an organization in Lebanon that has 10 years experience. The employees has 10 years experience and they are still procurement officers because the job there is very complex. But it depends on the size of the organization. I would say 2 to 3 years as a procurement officer is fair enough. Mr. Makhlouf is asking, which certificate are you biased towards and why? I am very biased towards Apex Education in general, because I know, I have experienced that they build the proper skills needed for the market, Thomas. And I am biased towards CIPS Education because they build the skills needed for the market today. Okay. And the bias here is just not a human bias, it's just a rational bias because I know how these certificates are being structured. If someone feels he's interested in procurement but he did not work yet in the profession, do you think they should keep learning about the procurement? Of course, because as I said, we have a skills gap and I want to hire a procurement officer. I want that procurement officer, Hazar, to have the skills needed for that. So I want him to be educated on what are the 5 rights of procurement. What are the main contract clauses that can be in my contract and so on. So yeah, please keep going, learning about procurement as long as you want to work there. Supply chain is very wide. It's not easy to master all the areas. Yeah, of course, you are not needed, Hazar, to master everything. You are needed to master the skills in a function. You will end up working in a function like planning or sourcing. So to start with, try to master the skills of that function. We need more experience for Hamza's asking CSCP. Yeah, if CSCP is not the right thing for you, don't go for it. I totally agree with that. Can we start, Zaid is asking, can we start with SCORE before having any other certificates? Of course, I have been teaching SCOREs to people that works in finance. If what you need to learn about is how to structure a supply chain, how to benchmark the supply chain, how to analyze a supply chain, yes, Zaid, you can do that. Okay. Would it be preferred to have got supply chain education and experience? Of course, Zaid. Okay. There's no precedence of these certificates. They tackle different issues in the supply chain. Ibrahim is asking, where are we on blockchain in the Middle East? We are at -1, Ibrahim. Blockchain is an advanced technology that had not yet proved, we call it emerging practice. It didn't have proven record of implementations yet in the world, by the way, with some exceptions. So where are we in the blockchain implementation in the Middle East? We are far, far, far behind from it. But it might be something in the future to look at. Suhad is asking how many exams in CSCP? It's only 1 exam. Mustafa is asking, great question, which better for a fresh graduate, CSA or CPIM? Look, very good certificates, but CPIM Part 1 is more reputable, and CPIM Part 1 is more dedicated to manufacturing environments. So if you are an industrial engineer, I would rather direct you to CPIM Part 1. CSA would still teach you supply chain, but it's more generic and not focused on manufacturing. Mr. Thivar is asking, which is best for me, certified forecasting professional or demand-driven planner? Each one of them teaches you something different. The demand-driven planner, teaches you an unorthodox way of doing planning in the supply chain, which is basically demand-driven, while the certified forecasting professional would teach you the classic forecasting techniques and skills. Anas is asking, would having too many certificates that are not relevant to your job capacity affect your career negatively? I would question, Anas, I would question someone that's having PMP, which is a project management certificate, but works as an accountant. I would ask him, why would you? I mean, the reason why you want to earn a certificate, Anas, is to bridge a talent gap and raise a skill in you to benefit personally and at a work level and a professional level. If you don't need Six Sigma, don't obtain Six Sigma education. If it is nice to have, good for you, but if it's a must-have, go obtain it, okay? I personally do not value someone with many certificates that's irrelevant to what he does. That's a personal view. And I'm sure HR and managers would look for the same. Badr is asking, what do you suggest for someone in supply chain managerial level with more than 10 years of experience managing end-to-end supply chain? CSCP or SCORP? As I said, CSCP would teach you end-to-end strategic level supply chain practices, which is perfect for your description, but SCORP will teach you how to reconstruct your supply chain. So this is two different directions. Okay, it's all about what do you really want to learn again. But I would go with CSCP. Is it mandatory to get SCORP certified prior to getting CSCP certificate? There is no absolute relation between them. SCORP teaches you how to reconstruct your supply chain, benchmark its performance. CSCP teaches you a set of different practices for plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. Hisham is asking, I attended CSCP in 2016 and I have the material but could not attend the exam. Can I study from the same material? Yes, you can. But you know, there are some differences. I would say 10 to 20% of the material restructure, but still 2016 is valid for the material for the examination, so you don't have to invest much in material. Yeah, but there's a bit differences between both. Osama is asking, I am a shipping team leader purely managing transport after demanding and purchasing. I am thinking in CLTD, even it's not pure transport. What do you think? Brilliant, man, because Osama, you need to have the CLTD is a perfect choice because it will teach you the whole logistics function and will create a comprehensive approach for you to think of logistics, including transportation and shipping and everything. So I highly recommend that, Osama, of course. Brahim is asking, I'm a demand and supply planner holding CLTD now. What is the best next certificate? Demand and supply planner. CSCP is not the right thing, probably. I would recommend for demand planning that you would go for CPF, the Certified Forecasting Professional. DDP is a different way of doing planning. It requires a whole new thinking in the organization. So for now, stick for the Certified Planning Professional. Brahim Bito is asking, I'm a plant procurement. I need your advice for certification, depending on your level, but think of CIPS education, as I said. Diploma in procurement and supply is great. Maria is asking, what are the best certificates to improve negotiation and communication skills for supply chain for entry level? If it is only what you look for, Maria, is negotiation, then only attend any course in negotiation. If you want a holistic procurement education that includes negotiation, go for the CIPS diploma in procurement and supply. How much time ideally, Yasser is asking, how much time ideally would I need to be CSCP or SCORE certified? SCORE is much easier than CSCP. CSCP is major and big. I would say you can do CSCP either self-study or attending a course in 6 months' time. SCORE, it will take you 2 to 3 months of hard work. Hussam Sarsour is asking, I'm a warehouse manager and looking to be a supply chain manager. What is the best certificate for me? Definitely the one that will teach you plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable, and that would be CSCP, Hussam. Malik is asking, do you think it must be professional to excel? Do you think it must be professional in Excel when we want to take CSCP? There is no relation between Excel as an application and CSCP, because CSCP teaches you supply chain practices and Excel is Excel. Noor is asking, what certificate you recommend for automotive supply chain manager? Supply chain is not about an industry. You know, I have worked in the aviation industry. I knew zero about aviation, but I could manage because I had CSCP. Okay, so Noor, it's not about automotive. It's about the supply chain as a discipline. Okay, so CSCP will do for you. Abdullah is asking, how long do I need to nail CSCP? You need to dedicate at least 200 hours of constant studying for that. You would make those lists with attending a class. What do you think of the business analyst domain in supply chain? It's Makram is asking. It's a brilliant future, man. Being a business analyst in logistics and supply chain is something really big. However, I'm not sure how does the market perceive it in the Middle East. But yeah, this is a bright future, business analysis and supply chain. How can we get the slides? I will make sure that you get a recording of this webinar. Yasser is asking, is it required to get training course prior applying to get CSCP or SCORE? No, general knowledge or experience is enough. Dina is asking, I am very interested in becoming and working in the supply chain analysis field. Shall I go for CSCP? CSCP, Dina, will teach you the practices of supply chain, but it will not open an analysis approach for you. Okay, it will not open analysis approach for you, but it will teach you the practices like VMI, blanket orders, sales and operation planning, in which you can use to build on for business analysis. I mean, you can't be a business analyst without understanding what is an S&OP process. What does it do to you? Okay, Dina. So I wouldn't say it's recommended or mandatory, but I would say, yeah, I would expect a supply chain analyst to have good understanding of supply chain practices, and CSCP would give you that edge. Brahim is asking, I'm interested in planning, although I am in procurement. What is the best certificate you recommend to take? In planning, if you are in a manufacturing environment, go for CPIM Part 1 and 2, or the forecasting one, CPF, or Certified Production Forecasting and so on. Certified Planning Forecasting and so on. Omar is asking, I'm a procurement planning specialist position under what category? Procurement management, man. Okay, so you would go for CIPS education. By the way, the main reason why I did this webinar is that I have seen the massive requests we receive to attend CSCP class. But I always tell my team, please educate those learners that you need to get the proper skills and certificates for yourself. Okay? Which might be something else. Mice is asking, I have a landscape design background, but I have been working as tenders officer for non-profit organization for 3 years. What certificate should I take? Immediately, CIPS education is highly recognized by the non-profit organizations worldwide. So please go there. Osama is asking, I'm an undergraduate business management student. So will CPIM be right for me? CPIM will teach you production management if this is what you look for. I would highly recommend that you do CSCA, Certified Supply Chain Analyst, as an entry-level education, or CPIM Part 1 to teach you basics of supply chain in a manufacturing environment. Raed is asking, I am working on sales and supply support leader in retail company, some of planning, some of ordering, shipping, clearance, inventory management. what is your recommendation to start with? Again, the same answers pops up. It's about what skills you need to you raise in yourself. If you need to learn end-to-end, like bits of planning, ordering, shipping, clearance, and inventory management, yeah, the CSCP will be great. However, CSCP is strategic by its nature. Still, CLTD might give you this edge. Okay, Certified Logistics, Transportation, and Distribution. Firas is asking, any statistics about HR knowledge of the supply chain certificate in your region? I don't have statistics, but I know as a fact from my discussions with colleagues in HR and recruiters around the Middle East and so on, their knowledge is not high. One of the main reasons what I think is the profession is not, from a job perspective, why the profession is not advanced today is that HR does not really understand, not all of them definitely, what is the set of skills needed for a supply chain professional. Okay, so for us, we are not good yet there. Victor is asking, what is the difference between CSCP and CSCA? I did answer this before. CSCP is a strategic education, very reputable, DISME, huge. CSCA is an entry-level education. So the difference between them is massive. Tariq is asking, I have few years experience in procurement, order operations, handling, expediting, warehouse management. How can I tell which is better, CSCA or CSCP? As I said, both of them talks about plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. But CSCA is an entry-level education. Is it what you look for, ABC of supply chain? Go for CSCA. You want to start something big and learn the greatest best practices in the world for supply chain, that would be CSCP. Mr. Ikapi is asking, how do I do this course? Which one, please? Let me know. Too many questions, guys. Sorry for that. Yasser is asking for attending CSCP training. The duration is always too long for almost 2 months, which is hard to manage for overseas candidates. Yasser, come to an online class. What is the most possible option to attend base for such cases? Especially that I am in favor of attending. I'm not in favor of attending online. I'm sorry for that. Base training. Yeah. So if you're not in favor of attending online, then you need to look for a crashed course, which I don't recommend. There are courses like 5 days in a row, but CSCP is too big to be crashed in 5 days. And you will feel bored, tired, exhausted in the 3rd day of the amount of information that you grasp, Yasser. So I think you need to make either self-study or enroll in a mentorship program, or just convince yourself that online might work for you. Diab is asking, I am importing fans and electric applications. What is the certificate that's supposed to be obtained? It's not about what you import, Diab, with all due respect, of course, to what you do. It's about the skills needed in this case. So maybe what you need to learn here is take one generic supply chain education, just to understand how the supply chain works, and probably focus on some logistics. And I don't think in that case you need to go for a great certificate. Probably a short course in logistics management would do for you, like international regulations, customs, and so on. Mamado is asking, can you please advise some books to enhance your supply chain? Of course, man. Try the Supply Chain for Dummies by Mr. Daniel Stanton. That's a great book, Supply Chain for Dummies. Our supply chain, in addition to all these certificates that we may choose to boost your career. Yeah, I try Supply Chain for Dummies, try Supply Chain Management. There's a one book, great Supply Chain Management. I forget the author name, but I can try to get you. But for now, try Supply Chain for Dummies. That's a great book. So Had is asking, if I am going for CSCP, how many parts module are they? As I said, there are 3 modules, and one of them is strategic. The second is tactical, and the third tactical and operational, and the third is generic best practices. Dina is asking if you know any specific business analyst, data analyst, or data science certifications. Not to my knowledge, Dina, I'm sorry for that. But what I know for a fact that there is a whole institute for data analysis that you can Google here or there. How much time is required to complete CPF, the Certified Forecasting Professional? Anas is asking. The class is like 30 hours, and then you sit for an exam. So I would say you need 1 month of education. Mahmoud Abu Saif is asking, production senior supervisor planning to get entered in supply chain knowledge and field. My recommendation is CPIM, Certified Production and Inventory Management. What is the recommended certificate that link between planning and procurement? CIPS education, diploma in procurement and supply. Dina is asking, can you please specify them if you do? Yeah, yes, sure, Dina, but give me some time to Google that for you. I will help you. Ahmad Usama, I don't know what question is that question. Qusay is asking, I'm a purchasing manager from 14 years. What do I need for development? CIPS education on a higher level, Qusay, like level 5 and level 6, would be very beneficial for you, Qusay. If I want to look for a career in non-profit organization, what I should take? The non-profit organizations in the procurement function are very biased towards CIPS education, so you may wish to check that. Forgive me, guys, too many questions. I'm trying my best to answer them all. Yasser is asking, what is your recommendation for getting certified by CSCP or SCORP? Any tips? I think we did answer that, Yasser. As I said, different directions depending on what you want to learn. Osama is asking, do you advise CPIM for a business management student, or will engineers be superior? I think it's rather for those who works in the manufacturing industry. Okay. One of the most informative sessions. Thank you, Hazar. My pleasure. Are you planning to have, Anas Habub is asking, are you planning to have ISM certificate within MUHAKAT? No, because Anas, it's very American specific for the meantime, and they don't have, the business model does not have much partners outside the United States. So we partnered with CIPS to provide the skills needed for procurement professionals. Yash Patel is asking, what courses would you recommend for an industrial engineer working distribution center? Depends what you want to learn, but for distribution centers, logistics looks the right answer, so CLTD in this case. I'm a senior application consultant implementing supply chain models. Ahmad is asking, which certificate is best for career path like SAP and Oracle? I do respect all the ERP applications, but I don't believe in the need to have certificates in using SAP and Oracle personally. I would rather learn supply chain practices. Ibrahim is asking, what is the recommended certificate that link between procurement and planning? We did talk about that. Anas Habub, reference to my first question, to have CPIM certificate and you work in procurement. This is what you mean. I mean, Anas Habub, if you want to work in procurement, or if you do work in procurement, focus on CIPS education as a source of procurement science. What is the recommended certificate? Ibrahim is asking between, and we did answer that. Noor Abu Jamus, are there any prerequisites for CSCP? Either being university graduate or having 3 years experience on the field. The more you have experience, the better, Noor. The more you enjoy it, actually. Okay. Great. Mice is asking, if you want to look for a career in non-profit organization, we did answer that, right? Okay. Suhad is asking, is there CSCP by Apex? Yes, CSCP is offered by Apex, Suhad. I hope this answers the question. Okay, is CSCP appreciated? Suhad is asking, is CSCP appreciated by the NGOs? Yeah, of course, because NGOs today are attempting to act like private sector when it comes to supply chain, inventory management, you know. There's a whole shift in the way the NGOs are working today. So yeah, it is being appreciated. It depends also if it is international or not. Most probably if it's international, yeah, it would make it sound good business to them. Ibrahim Khalaf is asking how much time to study CLTD. I would say you need like 100 hours of dedicated studying. Mustafa is asking, which is better for a fresh graduate, CSCA or CPIM Part 1? As I said, one of them, the CPIM Part 1 is more reputable and more expensive and more time consuming. And CSCA is less cost, time, and everything. CPIM is more focused on the production side of the in e-commerce. My task is processing orders, sourcing, shipping, DHL. I highly recommend that you go for CLTD because it talks about all these trends, Mustafa. Badr is asking, for someone with multiple years of practical experience with strong reputation in supply chain systems and practices covered with most supply chain topics, that is still worth going to CSCP. What certification program recommended? Badr, test yourself against the knowledge in CSCP. And if you score high, then no, not necessarily. But I have seen supply chain directors that are coming to CSCP class and learning a lot from that. Okay, this is what I love. I have seen a lot that comes with logistics background, master in logistics, and so on, still learn from CSCP. This is because of the diversity of CSCP and the amount of practices and best practices written there. So yeah, I still say Badr, it's going to be an easy ride for you if you work with all these practices within your organization. Okay. Victor is asking, I'm an accountant, but I work in logistics management, but I want to be in supply chain master. Where do I start from? CSCP is a great start. Suhad's asking, I suggest another webinar on CSCP and CIPS since everybody's asking about them in Ayuni. Of course, why not? Dedicated one. Does CSCP generally cover the CPIM CLTD? This is a great question, Muhammad. CSCP covers 35% of CPIM material and CLTD material. Meaning, because it is spanning over plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. So it takes part of making, which is CPIM, and it takes part of delivering, which is CLTD. So yeah, I would say the knowledge in CSCP is very comprehensive. The knowledge in CSCP covers 35% of CPIM and CLTD actually. How many credit hours the CPIM level 1 takes? 31 in education, and I would say 50 in self-studying. Victor is asking, do you offer courses CSCP? Yes, we do. You can attend the online classes. How much time CSCA takes? CSCA is very short, Malik. It takes like 21 hours of attending, and I would say more 20 hours of studying. Okay. Anas is asking, any person who has skills for any one part of the supply chain like me, I want to be in planning only. Is it good long-term strategy? Yes, of course. Being niche, Anas, is a very good strategy, you know. Professional and planning of supply chain. I love that. Of course, it's a good long-term strategy. What is the duration of CLTD? CLTD is 50 hours in a class setup, Abdul Wahab, sorry. And CSCA is 21 hours only. CPIM Part 2 is very advanced. Yes, it is very advanced, Hazem. Hazem Hamza is asking, topics not available in CSCP. Do you agree? Yes, I agree, because CSCP has only 35% of what is taught in CPIM. Okay, meaning, for example, topics like sales and operation planning, inventory management are chapters in CSCP, but they are modules in CPIM. Okay, so CSCP does plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. Not briefly, but it goes over them, but CPIM goes deeply in the topics of plan, source, and make for manufacturing environment. So yes, I agree with you. Yusuf is asking, I'm getting CSCP classes. What is your advice to pass exam? Yusuf, you need to study the material twice. You need to answer all online learning system questions. Yazid is asking, what do you think of supply chain courses offered by IATA? IATA is a reputable organization for aviation systems, but they tackle issues from an aviation perspective. cargo management, and so on. So not bad if you work in that field, Yazid. If you work in aviations and cargo management, that would be a great source of education. Osama is asking, last question for today. Osama is asking, do CLTD relate to engineers too? If you want, if you work in the logistics field, yeah, Osama, it can be of a great certificate for you. Okay, more. Last one. What is the best EPIC certificate for ERP consultants implementing supply chain modules? Definitely CSCP. You know what I'm saying that? Because a lot of our classes, we had ERP consultants from AX, Oracle, SAP attending because they want to know how does supply chain really function. And this is what a CSCP is all about. Okay, good. I think that's it for today. I want to thank you very much, very much for sticking around for another 30 minutes. So this class has gone to 1 hour and a half. I want to wish you a very good night, and I'm thankful for all these questions. Thank you, Hazar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abdul Wahab. My pleasure, guys. Thank you. We will make sure to have a recording of this session sent to you with a certificate of attendance. And so the greatest learning before you all leave is that it's not about the certificate, it's about the skills that you need to raise in yourself. Then which international certificate does do that for me is the one that you need to study. Okay, don't jump into classes because you want to just earn certificates. Okay, have an experience of someone like me because I've been there before, and I want you to choose the right education for yourself. Okay. Thank you very much, and enjoy your night. And we're looking forward to another webinar probably next Saturday, but I get to think of what is the topic will be for the next webinar. Thank you very much and stay tuned. Allah ma'akum. Bye-bye, everyone.